Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing today. I represent the state of Montana. We're home to over 3,000 miles of railroad track, and we move a lot of products. In fact, we heavily depend on our railroads for our ag industry. Agriculture is our #1 industry in Montana. It's a $5 billion a year industry, and about, for example, 80% of our wheat crop is exported overseas, and so it's our connection from the rails to the ports that allows us to grow our businesses back home. We've had a lot of success and growth certainly in the energy industry as well. Certainly we see a lot of coal trains going by. We see the growth now with the Bakken. It's not just a North Dakota experience. The Bakken spills into Montana as well. In fact, today I met with the Montana grain growers. I literally just came from meeting with them to this hearing. They ship over 130 million bushels of wheat to the Pacific Northwest terminals each year. And we've had some constraints and been working with our rail carriers. But it should be noted, today we're going to be having the Keystone Pipeline, some more amendment votes, and hopefully get this Keystone Pipeline passed in the Senate. Did some quick math. The Keystone Pipeline, there'll be oil coming into an on-ramp in Baker, Montana. What that means overall for the supply chain is the equivalent of 4,000 rail cars a month, and that's just the Montana, North Dakota oil that will come into the Keystone Pipeline to be one more avenue in the overall complex supply chain to allow us to maybe reduce some of the constraints that we see right now in rail. So it's yet another argument for the need for the Keystone to allow us to more efficiently transport our goods to market. Mr. LaNegro, I realize you do not have operations in Montana. But I was a supply chain guy back in my days with Procter & Gamble, and the complicated nature of logistics and forecasts and so forth. We've had some rail capacity constraints in Montana. It's a byproduct of economic growth, which better to have constraints probably than excess capacity, but nonetheless constraints. How have you addressed rail capacity issues in other regions of the country when you look at solving some of these challenges?
Thank you, Senator, and you're right, we don't serve Montana, but we certainly take interchange from many railroads which do serve Montana. Again, 2014 was a situation where winter hit us first, and for essentially the first 3 months of last year, we were a bit under siege because of the weather, yet the volumes that we experienced in the first quarter really didn't drop off, which told us there was a lot of demand there. In the second quarter, literally the first day the sun came out and the snow stopped falling, we began to get significant growth. And when we plan for, say, 3% growth and we get 6 or 8 or 10% growth, that's a significant uptick for our business. The other thing we experienced last year was a bit of a geographic shift in our business. We saw a lot more traffic that went between, say, Chicago and St. Louis into the Mid-Atlantic and into the Northeast. So, not only did we have abnormally and unforecasted growth, we also had it twice that much on that northern part of our railroad. So what are we doing about it? When we got to the point in the second quarter of last year where we believed that this growth was going to be sustained rather than simply pent-up demand from the harsh winter, we began to pull a lot of levers. The first of those levers was to hire more people. Our train crews take between 6 and 9 months to go from somebody that you hire off the street to get qualified to actually run a train in operating service. And so that length of time, that lead time on that particular resource was pretty significant. We hired about 2,000 people last year, and we still have about half of them, a little less than half of them are still in the pipeline, which will come out of our training and on-the-job training and qualification in the first 4 months of this year. So train crews are a really important thing. Locomotives are also an extremely important part of the equation. We brought 400 more locomotives into our fleet last year, a combination of leases plus what we had in storage. Again, as the seasons ebb and flow, you have locomotives that might be in service or in storage, so we took all of those out of storage. And then we issued a purchase order for 300 new locomotives at, in the high 2 something million per copy. And so we pulled that.
What's the lead time on a locomotive?
Upwards of a year. Mm-hmm. Right, so we're just beginning. We got the first 2 locomotives that came out of that purchase order literally today. And so we'll see the first 75 of those ratably throughout the first 5 or 6 months of this year. The rest of the remaining 125 will get in the second half of the year, 100 next year, and then we also have a rebuild program, which is pretty significant, 100 more units out of that, and 150 units out of what we call the heavy repair program. So we literally will have another 300 or 400 locomotives in service this year on top of the incremental 400 locomotives that we put into service last year.
What metrics do you use to measure customer service?
Well, J.D. Power is certainly a measure that we look at, both internally as well as allowing the customers to have verbatim comments. So J.D. Power, being an independent agency, helps us understand both quantitatively as well as in narrative form what our customers are saying. And, you know, candidly, our local service, so that first mile, last mile that Mr. Brown talked about in his opening statement, was one of the highest scores that we saw. Certainly the network, because of all the factors that we've already mentioned, we saw some degradation in the...
Imagine you have some internal metrics, though, too, you're using there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So things like what we call CTA, committed time of arrival,
Yeah.
on-time arrivals, on-time departures, line of road velocity, you know, the number of cars online. We have a measure called LSM, local switching. So
What's been the biggest challenge in the last, say, 12 to 24 months of achieving your customer service goals?
it's really been resources. Again, if the growth hadn't been as great as it was, and we're all very thankful that the economy's growing.
Right.
At the same time, when we poll our customers, and we do this all the time, we poll our customers, what do you guys see? Right? How much growth do you
Gentleman's
see?
time has
And
expired.
Okay, thank you.